In a distant land, Queen Aden lived, who entered into an arranged marriage with the king to strengthen the alliance between their kingdoms. Despite all her efforts, the queen could not win her husband's heart, and over time he took 10 more wives, causing Aden to lose all hope for his attention. The only light in her life was her son, Prince Adel, to whom she gave all her love and care. As the sole focus of her attention, the prince grew up under relentless maternal control, which continued even as he became an adult. When Adele turned 22 and began inviting girls with the intention of marrying, Queen Aden found a way to drop something negative about each of them. No matter how worthy the candidate was, the queen always spoke critically. "This one can't cook. I heard she slept with half the village. She's too involved in her own affairs." These words inevitably ended with the same conclusion: "Trust me, son, I'm your mother, and I know what's best for you." Adele, despite his indignation, complied with his mother's decisions each time, turning away from the girl his mother disapproved of. Thus, the queen aimed to keep the prince entirely to herself, controlling every aspect of his life. Queen Adine, upon learning of her son's possible marriage, was convinced that the new bride would push her out of the prince's heart. When Adele introduced Ark to his mother, the young woman, known for her intelligence and decency, immediately made an impression with her culture and respect, kneeling before the queen with a warm greeting. The queen reacted somewhat reservedly and frowned, but her expression softened immediately when Adele enthusiastically spoke of Ark's culinary skills. He dreamed of her becoming his wife and asked his mother's opinion, full of hope. However, the queen quickly focused on her thoughts on how to ruin her son's relationship. Suddenly, she clutched her head and plaintively declared a torturous headache, hinting at a possible fever. Adele, concerned, rushed for a doctor, while Ark moved a stool closer and brought the queen water, trying to alleviate her suffering. The next day, when Adele came to check on his mother's health, the queen, already feeling better, gratefully accepted fresh fruit juice from him. As the prince was about to leave, the queen stopped him, taking his hand. "My son, let's discuss something important," began Prince Adele. Queen Adine immediately focused on his troubled expression. "Adele, you can't marry Ark," she said firmly. "But why, mother? Ark is the epitome of a perfect wife. She's beautiful, respected, honest, and cooks wonderfully. What more could one want in a wife?" Adele protested, not hiding his bewilderment. "I'm your mother. I know what's best for you. How could I deceive my own son, whom I raised?" The queen responded, feeling her words hit Adele's heart. The prince felt weak in the knees from the surprise of his mother's words and apologized for the argument. After apologizing, he asked an important question. "Mother, I trust your opinion, but could you give me just one reason why Ark is not suitable for me?" The queen sighed deeply, trying to find an answer. Because she began, and then Adele realized that his mother was just looking for any possible excuse to prevent the marriage. "You're a prince, and you can't just choose a bride without thoroughly investigating her background, her family, their lifestyle. We don't know everything about Ark's family. What if there are diseases or curses in their lineage?" The queen claimed, but her voice sounded unconvincing. Adele realized that his mother was simply trying to keep him to herself, as always. He calmly replied, "Mother, I understand your concerns and know you're worried about me, but there's a solution. I'll bring Ark to meet you personally, and you can ask her any questions." We can even conduct a thorough investigation of her family if needed. But please give her a chance. If you're still unsatisfied after this meeting, I'll do as you say." Adine was displeased, but seeing no other way out, agreed to give Ark a chance to express herself. 2 days later, Adele brought Ark to his mother, preparing for the upcoming conversation, which promised to be tense. As soon as the meeting started, Queen Aden bluntly stated, "I don't think you're suitable for my son." Her voice was decisive and firm. Ark, feeling lost, cautiously asked, "My queen, may I know the reason for such an opinion?" "You're an orphan. Your background is unclear. My son cannot marry someone who doesn't have a clear lineage," the queen explained, trying to sound convincing. Ark couldn't hold back her tears. "How can you speak so cruelly, using the death of my parents against me and reopening my old wounds just because you don't want to see me next to your son?" Adele sat silently, unsure how to resolve the situation. The queen continued, "My son is a prince, and I will not allow him to marry a girl without a noble origin." Our Ark, gathering her strength, stood up, wiped away her tears, and faced the queen, saying, "Before I leave, let me tell you something. My name is Princess Ark, daughter of King Adola and the great queen from the kingdom of Olu. If not for the war that destroyed my village and took my parents' lives, people like you would not have the opportunity to treat me so cruelly." Hearing this revelation, both Queen Aden and Prince Adel were shocked. Ark continued, "I have heard a lot about you and thought you might accept me as your son's wife and stop hiding him from the world." Then she quickly left the palace. The queen, watching Ark leave, muttered, "See, she's impulsive, fiery. That's why I said she's not right for you." "Mother, you were unfair," Adele quietly replied, realizing that his mother acted out of fear of losing him. Despite his mother's pleas to stay, the prince ran after Ark. He couldn't catch up with her immediately and spent several hours waiting near her house. When Ark finally returned, she was surprised and frightened by his presence. "What are you doing here?" she sternly asked. "I couldn't bear to see you leave. I can't agree with how you were treated. Let's try to fix everything," Adele pleaded. Ark was ready to reject him, but suddenly felt unwell. The prince helped her into the house, brought water, changed her clothes, and took care of her all night. The next morning, Adele called the royal doctor, who confirmed that Ark was pregnant. Ark herself was confused and overwhelmed with emotions, unsure whether to rejoice or fear the future. Adele was overjoyed. "Why aren't you happy? This is wonderful news. Don't worry about my mother. She'll understand that a royal child is a blessing for our family." However, Ark could not share his joy. Her doubts and fears, caused by her late mother's words about the difficulties a woman faces with an unloving mother-in-law, tormented her. "Adele, I'm still unsure. My mother always warned me to be wary of such situations. She feared that an unloving mother-in-law could make life unbearable," Ark confessed, torn by doubts and fear of the future with a family that might not accept her. Ark was torn between fear of her future mother-in-law, who clearly disliked her, and the desire to keep the father for her future child. She agonizingly pondered, "I don't want my child to grow up without a father, but can I endure the upcoming trials?" On the other hand, Prince Adel, filled with hope, went to his mother to share the news. However, Queen Adine nearly fainted from shock and angrily expelled him from her chambers, forbidding him to return. Despite his son's pleas and his assurances of his love for Ark and his desire to do everything right for their future family, the queen remained adamant. Adel, realizing that he could not persuade his mother, decided to seek support from his father, the king. He knew that his father could influence the situation. Under the circumstances, he went to his father and opened his heart, telling him about his love for Ark and the difficulties they faced. The king, weighing all his son's arguments, decided to support him. He called a meeting of the village elders and invited Queen Aden to an important meeting. When the queen arrived, she was greeted by a solemn assembly of respected community members. The king spoke first, talking about his son's deep feelings for Ark and his sincere desire to marry her. He pleaded with the queen to reconsider her opinion and give her blessing to the marriage, emphasizing that it was right and just for both Ark and their future child. The queen initially refused to listen to her heart and the pleas of her husband and the village elders. However, seeing that her resistance was futile, she decided to show that she was ready to bless Adel's and Ark's union, although deep down she swore to make Ark's life unbearable. Then, preparations began for a lavish royal wedding. With malicious intent, the queen devised a plan to sabotage the wedding. She knew she had to first win Ark's trust and convince her of her sincere repentance. One day, the queen visited Ark with tears in her eyes, apologizing for all her harsh words and asserting that she had changed her mind and wanted to rectify the situation before the wedding. Ark doubted this sudden turn, but decided that everyone deserves a second chance, especially a future mother-in-law, so she forgave her all her words. They embraced, and the queen offered Ark to move to one of the most beautiful rooms in the palace for convenient wedding preparation. Ark hesitated to accept this offer, but Adel convinced her that it would look like a sign of reconciliation with his mother. 2 days before the wedding, Ark moved into the offered rooms. The queen greeted her warmly and, as a gesture of goodwill, Ark decided to show her her wedding dress. Ark spent weeks searching for the perfect wedding dress and finally found the one in which she felt like a princess. She carefully took the dress out of the protective cover and presented it to the queen, which was a magnificent white dress with exquisite lace and beads. The queen sighed in admiration at the sight of the dress and showered Ark with compliments. Ark, happy from the warm words, began to feel that her mother-in-law was finally starting to accept her and appreciate her as part of the family. Ark carefully returned her wedding dress to the closet. As the room fell silent, the queen prepared her sinister intrigue. In the dawn hours, while the palace was still asleep, she secretly crept into the room where the dress was stored. With an ominous gleam in her eyes, the queen opened a large jar of red oil and began carefully pouring it over the silk fabric of the dress, watching as the liquid quickly absorbed into the lace, leaving irreparable stains. The queen stepped back, feeling a surge of satisfaction from the accomplished atrocity. She convinced herself that this action would stop the wedding, at least temporarily, until she could devise a more destructive plan in the morning. When morning arrived, Ark entered her bedroom to start preparing for the most important day of her life. However, the sight of the ruined dress struck her heart like thunder amid clear skies. "What a disaster!" she exclaimed, and tears sprang from her eyes as she realized that her dream of a perfect wedding had collapsed. Ark's friends rushed to her as soon as they heard her cries. They were shocked to see the state of the wedding dress and tried to comfort Ark, who could not stop her tears. One of the friends immediately notified Prince Adel, and he, accompanied by his mother, hurried to the scene. When the prince and queen arrived, Adele was shocked by the sight of the ruined dress. The queen, pretending to be surprised, asked about the cause of the disaster. Before Ark could say anything, she saw how her mother-in-law, standing at the entrance to the room, mockingly stuck out her tongue and smirked. At that moment, Ark realized that it was the queen who was behind the ruined dress. The understanding that her mother-in-law had destroyed her wedding dress sparked a surge of anger and disappointment in Ark, but also an epiphany on how to act next. The queen, pretending to be upset, approached Ark with apologies. "Only a monstrous person could do such a thing," she exclaimed. However, Ark, having accumulated anger and resentment, pushed her mother-in-law with such force that she fell to the floor. This caused shock among all present. "You are evil. You did this," Ark shouted, pointing at the queen. Prince Adel tried to calm the situation, but was confused by Ark's words. "Your mother ruined my wedding dress," she added. The prince, trying to resolve the conflict, said, "I know what happened to your dress, but that doesn't mean you can accuse my mother without proof." Meanwhile, the queen, overwhelmed by her obvious joy from her own plan, which caused discord between Ark and her son on their wedding day, began to cry and pretend to be repentant. "Why would I do this to you, Ark? I accepted you and love you as my daughter." No one believed the queen, and even Ark's friends began to doubt her words. Feeling that she was just looking for a scapegoat, Ark was so upset that she declared, "If this is how I'm treated before the wedding, what will happen after? This is a clear sign that I should leave. There will be no wedding." Friends and relatives began to plead with Ark not to cancel the wedding. When the king learned of what had happened, he summoned Ark to the palace to find out the whole truth. He listened attentively to her story about the ruined dress and her suspicions about the queen. The king was shocked by the accusations against his wife, but could not ignore Ark's pain and disappointment. He promised to find out the truth and do everything possible to ensure her an ideal wedding day. Ark, having recovered after the convincing words of the king and his promise to ensure an ideal wedding, agreed to continue preparing for the ceremony. The king immediately ordered the best tailor in the country to make a new magnificent wedding dress for Ark in the shortest possible time. Prince Adel, waiting outside the royal palace, met Ark and again apologized to her, trying to calm and reassure her of his support. When the wedding guests began to gather at the palace, among them was Yabo, Ark's aunt, and the only remaining relative on her mother's side. Ark hadn't seen her for 2 years, and the reunion filled her heart with emotions. The wedding turned out to be truly magnificent, leaving the entire village in awe of its colorfulness and joy. The king gave the newlyweds a beautiful mansion as a wedding gift, which especially pleased Ark, as she was worried about the possibility of living under the same roof as her mother-in-law, whom she considered evil. 2 days after the wedding, Prince Adel and Ark moved into their new home. The queen was outraged that her son had distanced himself from her and began to use all her manipulative skills to keep him close. She pretended to be sick, asking her son to come to her every day and take care of her, which left Ark alone in the large house. Ark, being 6 months pregnant, felt lonely and unprotected, trying to cope with household chores on her own. One day while she was cooking, there was a knock at the door. At the door stood her mother-in-law with a sick expression on her face. "What's wrong? You look unwell?" Ark said, seeing the state of the queen. The queen pretended that something was hurting her and, with difficulty coughing, walked into the kitchen, holding her chest. Ark quickly realized the theatrical performance of the queen. Her suspicions that this was just part of a cunning plan to keep Adele away from her and ensure his constant attention to herself were reinforced when the queen, with a pretense of weakness, declared, "I think I have a fever. I need you to take care of me." The prince, without hesitation, responded to her words, rushing to help his mother. Ark watched this with disappointment, biting her lip, seeing how her husband cared for his mother, who skillfully pretended to be helpless. In Ark's home, the queen behaved like a guest, refusing to help around the house under the pretext of her weakness. Instead, she demanded that Adele serve her at the first call, bringing food to her bed and comfortably arranging pillows for her. Ark tried to maintain patience, understanding that Adele felt obligated to care for his mother, but over time, the behavior of her mother-in-law became an increasingly difficult test. The queen not only criticized Ark's cooking and home decoration, but she even rearranged the furniture in the living room to her liking. But the most unbearable thing was how she monopolized her son's time and attention. Every minute Adele spent with his mother, Ark felt more and more lonely and forgotten. Ark tried not to show her concern, but the pressure and feeling of isolation grew. She felt her connection with Adele becoming weaker and weaker under the relentless pressure of the queen. In the end, the feeling of despair and loneliness began to prevail over the hope for a happy family life she had dreamed of. Day by day, Ark felt like an outsider in her own home, being pushed to the background while her husband's attention was entirely devoted to his manipulative mother. This tense coexistence reached a breaking point when Ark could no longer bear it and decided to openly talk to Prince Adel about his mother's behavior. She poured out all her disappointment, trying to open Adel's eyes to the manipulations of the queen. "I can't believe you treat my mother this way," Prince Adel replied, piercingly looking at Ark. "She is sick and needs my help. Don't you see that?" These words saddened Ark even more, as she saw how her prince's mother used his care for her own selfish purposes. Tears welled up in Ark's eyes as she realized that her words did not resonate in her husband's heart. The next day, she felt even more isolated, staying out of the main rooms of the house, where Adele constantly went to care for his mother. This feeling of isolation and injustice made Ark rethink her position and the future of their relationship. She began to understand that if the situation did not change, her life and the life of her future child would be full of difficulties and misunderstandings. The thought that she had to fight not only for her happiness, but also for the well-being of her child became a new stimulus for action. In her isolation, she began to devise a plan on how to change or improve her situation, relying on her own strengths and capabilities. One day, the queen, noticing how Ark was eating, immediately remarked with disdain, "No wonder you look like this. You eat too much." Ark, feeling humiliated, tried to remain calm, but inside, feelings of disappointment and anger accumulated about the behavior of her mother-in-law, who seemed to enjoy every opportunity to humiliate her. The behavior of the queen became increasingly unbearable. She complained about everything: Ark's culinary skills, her appearance, and even the cleaning of the house. Prince Adel, blinded by love for his mother, could not see her faults and always took her side. 3 months later, after the queen finally left the house, Ark felt relief. However, the queen soon played a new card, convincing the royal doctor to declare that she had an incurable disease and had only a few months to live. Prince Adel, devastated by this news, immediately rushed to his mother, leaving pregnant Ark alone in the house. That same night, Ark went into labor. She found herself facing an impossible choice, as she could not contact Adele, who was busy caring for his mother. Despite this, Ark proved her determination and strength by asking for help from 2 royal guards who helped her get to the maternity home. Ark gave birth to a beautiful girl and, holding the newborn in her arms, felt a surge of strength and determination. She devised a plan to resolve her issues with her husband and his despotic mother. When Adele finally arrived at the maternity ward, he was greeted by a sight he never expected: his tired but triumphant wife holding their daughter. Ark looked at the queen with a steely gaze and said, "I have tolerated your malice for too long, but now it's over. I will no longer allow you to disturb my peace of mind. I now have happiness that I need to take care of." Then she turned to Adele. "We are leaving this village and starting a new life elsewhere. You can go with us or stay with your mother. The choice is yours." The situation required not just a decision from Adele, but a demonstration of firm character and the ability to stand up for his family. He realized that despite his love and loyalty to his mother, his direct duty was to protect and support his wife and child, who needed him no less, perhaps even more. Prince Adel decides to follow Ark and their daughter, deciding that their well-being and future are more important than maintaining a connection with his mother, who, despite her claims, used her illness as a manipulative tool to keep control over her son. This choice was not easy, but it showed that Adele was capable of independent actions and ready to take responsibility for the well-being of his family. Moving to a new place symbolized a new beginning for the young family, where they could build a life based on love, respect, and mutual support, away from the toxic influence of the queen. This turn of events emphasizes the importance of family values and choosing one's own path in life, despite external pressure and manipulation. Ark, demonstrating incredible strength and determination, showed that sometimes to protect your happiness, you need to make a difficult but necessary choice.